Well, on behalf of my TAC, I want to welcome everybody today to the Fundamentals of Golf with MIT golf instructor Joe Rocha. He's going to show us all the fine details on the best way to hold the club, perfecting your swing, and all the great tips to make your golf game fantastic. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Joe, and you can talk about the fundamentals of golf.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, I can trust everybody can hear me okay. I appreciate everybody joining the meeting. And I'm outside at a range that I teach at in Middleton, Mass, which is about a half hour outside of Cambridge. And we have a full tee line, so we have batting cages. I'm behind the batting cages. There's a road here. I'll talk kind of loud so everybody can hear. Okay, so everybody can hear okay? I guess you're muted, so you can't say.
Yeah,
I can hear you just fine.
Yeah,
All right,
we're good
to go. Okay, cool.
All set, yeah.
Okay, so I figure we'll start with the setup because well, we're dealing with a couple of interesting challenges with the golf in that the ball isn't moving, and you know, we stand in the same footprint when we make the motion. So setup becomes even more important than maybe some other sports. So the first thing we can talk about is how to hold the club. I mean, after all, that's our connection to the club itself. So what you want to do, what I would recommend is, and I know a couple things, maybe one or two of you have a club in hand, and I know this is being recorded, so you can always go back and look at it with a club and piece it together to come up with your best golf swing. And then another thing I'll say is, I know we might have some different skill levels from beginner to maybe experienced players. So I think there'll be a little bit something in there for everybody. If it gets a little complicated, don't worry about it. We'll try to keep it as simple and as clear as possible. And then maybe things you might find a little confusing, eventually it might come around and make more sense. So, okay. The first thing is holding the club. We try to refer, sometimes it's referred to the grip, but we prefer to say holding the club because the grip is the actual component of the golf club. We hold the club. Sometimes when we say grip, it can infer kind of a tight hold on the club, which maybe isn't necessary. So first things first, like you see me now, and when you think about it, we usually hold things to our side. So if you pretend you're just holding a suitcase, briefcase, book bag, anything by your side, that's really how we hold the club. So I'm going to let my arm hang by my side and just let the club fall in my hand. If you notice, if you can see, my hand is slightly off center, or my thumb anyway is slightly off center to the grip. We sometimes refer to this line formed by the thumb and the hand as a V, and this will point to like the right collar of your shirt. I know this could be backward looking at the video, but if you kind of go, that would be right collar. Okay, so that's the first thing, and you'll see players on TV and good players start behind the ball with their hand by their side so that they get a good natural hold on the club. So we'll start with the lead hand. My left hand is a right-handed player. Excuse me. And so we have sort of this view. We'll call it the top down. Now underneath, it's important. I'll come close here. It's important to place the club diagonal in your hand. So a couple of parts of the hand, you have this base of the thumb you have the base of the pinky, and you have actually the carpal tunnel is right in the middle of the hand. So what we're looking to do is place the club underneath the pad up from the pinky. Okay, we don't want it in the middle near the carpal tunnel because it sort of freezes our whole wrist and forearm and inhibits our ability to swing the club freely. So underneath that pad, again, up from that's a really important point, up from the pinky, we're gonna place it right below. And sometimes we do a sort of a drill or a test where we let go with our fingers, except we hook our index finger and wedge the club underneath. I should have mentioned, first things first, and sometimes a good friend of mine was big on this drill, and I've adopted it, is if we twirl the club in our hand, we want to get it to where we stop the club where the club is balanced or square. So that's first things first before we place our hand on the club, okay? So just to, and a fun thing you can do is, the second part to that drill is if you close your eyes, I swear my eyes are closed, and twirl the club, you want to see if you can get it back to square, just so you have a little bit of sense of where that balance of the club is, okay? The backhand, right hand, trail hand is going to be, again, as our arm hangs by our side, it's going to come over and it's going to cover your lead hand thumb. If you notice, my thumb is on me looking down, it's on the left side of the grip. Again, the V we refer to is about at the right collar of my shirt. At that point, you can then either I overlap my pinky of my right hand to my left, or you can interlock, or you can even go 10 finger, all fingers on the club. Okay. So how we hold the club, I'll go into something real quick. This is an idea stolen from another friend of mine, Michael Jacobs, who teaches in New York, but it's this plane that's attached to the club. And what happens, we have 6, and this is where I'll try not to confuse us, but we have 6, just as a general reference frame, we have 6 ways we can move the club. It comes under 2 headings, one being force, meaning straight line, and another being torque or twist force. Well, that would be contradictory. So torque, twisting. Okay, so one force, one torque. And the way the club moves is we can force the club up and down like this. We can force the club side to side, and we can force the club out and in. And then those are the 3 forces: up and down, side to side, out and in. Then there's 3 torques. So we can, and this refers more specifically to the plane, is we can pitch the plane, so torque this way. We can yaw the plane, torque side to side, and then we can roll the plane. So I mentioned that just so that how we hold the club is going to influence how we mix in those 6 inputs. So there's no one perfect grip. There's many different ways to hold the club, and many great players hold the club differently, but each will move those 6 inputs in a different way. One might, because of their grip, yaw the plane more. The other might pitch the plane more. So what I showed you as far as how to hold the club is a good neutral sort of way to hold it so you can get a good mix of those 6 inputs. Just to give you a little bit of background on the holding of the club. Because as you go, you're going to see oh wow, he or she, like, they don't hold it like but it works. Like, why? Well, there's a reason for it. Okay, so that's how we hold the club. I sometimes say how we hold the club is about, say, 80% of the whole swing. So once you get your hands on the club, I kind of joke when I'm in my own lessons. I make jokes to myself. I say, okay, they've gotten their money's worth. Once I show them how to hold it, because it's that important. Okay, but we're moving on. So next step is the posture. So with our posture, we want, and I heard a nice thing where about the posture, if you walk around like someone's pulling, like a marionette, like someone's pulling a string and you're just sort of dangling, that would be a nice way to walk around or stand. Because driving, at the computer, sitting, we tend to get a little bit rounded. At least I know I do, and a lot of my students do. So that's always a challenge. So what we want to start with, we'll call it a neutral spine. So we're here. I'm going to put this club on my back to represent my spine. And what we're going to do is we're going to hinge from our hips. A little bit of knee flex comes in there too. So I hinge back, a little bit of knee flex, and then let my arms hang. So from this view, it would be I push my hips back, a little bit of knee flex, let my arms hang. A little bit of a pitfall. Some players, maybe especially new players, maybe fall into is they try to sole the club where it's flat on the ground and their hands get up a little high. So it's actually preferable to have, we call it heel and toe, toe, heel. It's actually preferable at setup to have the toe up a little bit. Because during the downswing, the shaft's gonna bend and it'll be flat at impact. So anyway, hinge from good, nice, neutral spine, hinge from the hips, let the arms hang, and however the club looks, it looks. What that does is put us in an advantage position to torque the club in this direction. Okay. So the posture, grip posture. All right. So this is an interesting spot on the club. This is called the center of mass of the club, where the mass is concentrated most. And my sort of thinking is that we begin the swing at a little bit of a disadvantaged position because this center of mass, I don't know if this, yeah, that's the center of mass is below our hands. And because we hold the club at a distance, if I hold the club at the center of mass, the club only weighs a pound. So I can twist it very easily, move it very easily. But because we hold it at a distance, that distance that we hold it, it becomes more difficult and it feels heavy. And I've even asked some of the athletes that I teach, hey, what do you think? And they say, you know, it feels heavy, which is always kind of surprising to me because again, like the club only weighs a pound, but because we hold it away from the mass center, it feels heavy. Now, what I'm leading up to with this is, if we call the setup step number 1, step number 2 would be to get the mass center in line with our hands at this point in the swing when the club shaft is parallel to the ground. So people tend to avoid moving the club, like we said, the directions of force. So the direction of force when we start the swing is actually, some of the direction is this way, so that we can get the center of mass in line with our hands. But what people will do is avoid this feeling and start to move the club around too much, and then that can lead to other issues. So if you're holding a club now, or if you go back and watch the video, a good drill is just to get the club moving in this direction, which people understandably don't really consider too much when it comes to the golf swing. They think that the swing, conceptually, the swing is more around, more straight back, straight through, but actually there's a dimension that's vertical to the swing. So managing this center of mass becomes one of the top priorities in the golf swing. And if we can manage it, well, we've already started to manage it by how we're holding it and how we're standing to it. But if we can have an awareness of the club moving up, out, back, then we're off to an even better start. Okay. Does anybody have any, should we see if anybody has any particular questions at this point, or keep going?
Yeah, we'll give like 30 seconds if anybody has any quick questions for Joe. Just drop them in the chat and we'll read them out. I just wanted to let you know, Joe, everything on Zoom is mirrored, so if you hold up your left hand, it will look like your left hand to us. It's
oh, cool.
Zoom takes care of it, so you don't have to go crazy.
Okay,
on that
okay.
method.
Gotcha.
And if you hold anything up for us, we'll be able to read it.
Okay, neat.
George Roth says, pieces are good, but is the swing all about putting it together?
Yeah, of course. Well, we're gonna get into that.
Okay, and then we have a question from Uli that says, you said to emphasize the heel. What's a good angle at the start to have the heel and toe pointing up?
The lie angle of the club, it's called the lie angle. This angle from the ground is usually around 60 degrees for kind of an average club. Everybody, based on their body type, height, is going to be a little different, but probably right around that 60-degree mark. It's probably good. Going back to the other question about putting it all together, that's hugely important, and absolutely we're going to talk about rhythm and playing and how to put it all together.
Excellent, and those are the only questions I see so far, so we can keep heading on.
Rolling. Okay, cool. Okay, sorry. So we're going to maybe break it down, not break it down, but we're going to move on to a little bit of body motion during the swing. And then I love that question because, yes, we're going to put it all together at the end. I promise. Okay. I suppose you could look at it maybe as doing like scales in piano. This is just some basics that at the end we'll put together. Okay, so kind of a cool thing is if you take your palms and point them out and reach one forward and the elbow back. So I have my palms out sometimes we call, if you remember, like, or know, like the Spider-Man, like shooting a web, it's going to be like that. So a nice sort of pre-round or stretch is opening up your whole upper body, whole body really, because when you do this, you're going to get some rotation into the hip as well. So there's multiple ways to, and I'll show you a couple others, to get your body moving. But I like this a lot for other reasons too, we might go over. But again, like palms straight out, reach one forward while you reach the elbow back, and you get a nice stretch through the rib cage, through the thoracic spine, through the hip. And then you can reverse it where you go this way and that way. And that would be more the forward swing. So being a right-handed player, I'd go back here, and then I'd go through on this side. So it gives me a nice, like, spiraling action. And that's what you want with the golf swing. A nice stretch too is just holding your palms out, reaching up, and just push up to get some extension of your spine, of your body. Because what will happen is when we get into this posture, we can sort of, if we stay there, we can get, well, I'll show you. If you stay down this way too much, what's going to happen is that center of mass is going to stay down too, and we don't want that. So we want this opening up of the of rib cage, back, like I said, hips. You can also take your club like this and just rotate back through, just to get some movement. Because again, the challenge is the ball doesn't move. We are operating in the same footprint, so we want to get dynamic motion this way. Okay. One important piece to the setup that I maybe, well, I didn't say directly, but I demonstrated, didn't say it, is if you notice, my left arm hangs straight down and my right hand goes to my left. And that's with all your shots. So the purpose of this is we want, again, I'll talk about the rib cage. With my left arm to more to my side than across my body, because I'll see a lot of players like start more in the middle of their body. But what happens is that you can see it, the arm starts to go across the body too much. So we want to minimize the arms going across. Okay, because remember too, like we talked about this up component. So if the arms are going across, that means the club's not going up enough. Okay, so when we set up, I like to see your lead arm hang, and when I look down, see my hands are like inside left thigh, so that when I go back, it's almost like my rib cage is in charge of my arm. So like that Spider-Man, I put my arm on my body, I turn my hand to hold the club, and I let the rotation of my rib cage move my arm. Okay? So I have to do some work to rotate so that my arm and rib cage work together. Because again, the pitfall here is that the arms, I've been seeing it a lot, is that the arms go, I was teaching a baseball player, you know, and they're standing more like this. So him in particular, the arms get across and then the swing goes off. So keep the arm more in front, trail arm goes to it, and move the rib cage to move the arm. I call it my Hall of Fame swing sometimes, where jokingly to people that if you let this, there was a player, Annika Sorenstam, on the LPGA Tour, who is in the Hall of Fame, and she really had this sense of just lead arm attached to the side, rib cage rotating, moving the arm, and she would even finish kind of like this. So everything was just right in front, and everything was straight, and she won a ton of tournaments. So that's an important piece. Okay. Getting that. You'll notice too, I don't know if you can see my feet, but some footwork too. We do like a step drill sometimes where we'll pick up and place our feet in the same position just to get some movement. So don't be afraid to, if your feet get a little bit active. There's a point where we can get too active, but I think most people, someone, what was the word she used the other day? Planted. She wanted to stay planted, and you don't want that. You want to be free to move. Okay. So that's a piece to it. Okay. What else? Well, I would say that the number one thing that I see where people struggle, including good players too, is, and maybe the point of instruction overall, is where we place the bottom of the swing. So a lot of times I'll get asked, and it's a great question, okay, where the ball placement. So where the ball is in relation to my feet. I have my arm hanging, right hand going to it. This gets into the low point of the swing, and we measure that in the golf room at MIT through TrackMan. It has a low point measurement, which is really helpful. So what I mean by that, and it's an important point, is when we have an iron, okay, like this, when we are coming into the ball, the club would be traveling downward, and at some point it's going to reach a low point of the arc, and then it's going to start to travel up. So with an iron, just for your concept, you want the club to strike the ball, and then the low point happens after. That's why sometimes you'll see a player take a divot that'll fly off, because they've struck the ball a few degrees downward while the club's still traveling downward, and then the bottom occurs, and then the club goes on the way up. With a driver, when we tee the ball up, we swing, the club travels down, we reach the low point, and then we're going to hit the ball on the way up with a driver. So with an iron, the low point occurs after the ball. With a driver, the low point occurs before the ball, so we hit a little bit up at it. And that's going to influence where we place the ball, because with an iron, we're going to be more to the middle to forward, where with a driver, we're going to place the ball further forward because we reach the bottom and then meet the ball. With an iron, we meet the ball and then the bottom. Okay? So that's an important point.
Hey,
Okay.
hey, Joe.
Yes.
Someone is wondering if it would be possible if you're able to shift your camera angle to see the ball, the ground as well. Is that possible? Yeah, that should be great.
Is that good or more? Do I need to do it more?
Let's see. Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much.
Okay, sure thing. Yeah, so what I was saying, sorry about that. Ball position, I refer to it as 3 ball widths. That's how much we're going to be moving the ball in our stance. So our driver is going to be off the inside of our left foot. Wide stance. And then say my 3 wood is going to be kind of the back of this white ball, so I'm going to be here. Notice my hands don't change. My left arm is always hanging straight. My 5 iron is going to be here. And also notice my right foot, as I go down in clubs, shorter clubs, my right foot gets closer. So now my 7 iron is going to be the second ball. And then the right foot comes closer. The pitching wedge, the pitching wedge is going to be the third ball. Stay there. Okay, so then all of a sudden that's middle because my right foot got closer. I mean, my right foot, if my right foot went really close, it'd be all of a sudden be back. So we're only moving the ball a little bit. Sometimes I refer to like buttons of your shirt to left shoulder. You're not moving the ball all over your stance, just a little bit. Okay. So the ball position is important. Okay, so let's start to we'll kind of do a full swing and kind of put it all together. And like I said, what led me to the ball position talk was the one thing that people struggle with, and like I was starting to say, even really good players, is they put the bottom. We sometimes put the bottom. I'm not above it. A little bit behind the ball. So as you can see, we're not coming through in a real like advantage position right there. So I just want to address that, and I'll do it within a full swing example so you can see how the whole swing kind of fits together. So what we're doing is we have our grip, we have our posture, we know that we have to manage this center of mass. Even hockey, you know, I think they skate around kind of like this, so they have the center of mass already in line. Okay, baseball, it's already above. That's an advantage position. With us, it's below, so we have to factor that in. So we're going to start back. I'll go slow motion swing. We're going to start back here. Ball's going to be in line. And then with the golf swing, we're on this angle. So see how the club is on an angle? So when we go back, the club would, the center of mass or club head would be in line with our hands. If I keep going, we're on this angled plane, so to speak. And then I keep going back. The club is back in line with my hands. Now at this point, I'm going to turn face this way. So we start back, left arm is hanging, right going to it, using my rib cage to move my arm primarily. Club's in line with my hands. I go to the top. A lot of people are going to, you know how we talked about all these ways to move the club? It's very tempting for people to want to lose this angle. So if you notice, the red ball is coming out. And then when we get down to the ball, we're going to hit behind, and then we're left to sort of just drag the club through. I'm going to continue on with this slow motion swing, but I'm going to refer to it as it's often referred to, but not defined, as ball striking. Okay, so we want to strike the ball, not scoop it or drag the club through. We want a good strike and precise as well. So here we are. So we're set up. We start the club back. We rotate the club back. And here, I'm starting down with primarily from the ground up, you could think of it as, but from the hip, from my right hip. And this is a more gradual curve that this makes. So I am curving the club. I am not torquing this way with the club. The club is wanting to fall out, but I have to torque against it. So right here, the club is wanting to fall, but I have to torque back in order to hold this club up. In order to hold the club up, I'm torquing toward me. So as we're starting down, I'm starting from the ground up. The club wants to, we're pulling up on the handle. The club wants to fall, but I'm not letting it. At this point, it comes out and around, and I reach the low point right there, and then through to the finish. So from this view, it might sound a little confusing, but let's see if we can stay with it and maybe learn something here. So the red ball starts on this side of my hands. It's in line. Now it's on this side. I swing back. It's in line, and then it's on this side again. When it gets to here, I'm moving the club in the direction of my finger to move the club out. So it's traveling down, but it's also traveling out so that I can reach the bottom. Again, what a lot of people want to do is let this club fall. And if you can see, the club face would be pointed to the right for a right-handed player, and then it's too late to try to square it. So then people start hitting the ball to the right. So you want to make sure that when you start down, well, all the building blocks will help you to do this, but when you start down, it's a little bit more from the ground. We're holding. We're not allowing this to fall too early. The club works out so that I can strike the ball up at the point where I want the contact to be, and then onto the finish. So instead of sort of out here, we want to keep this curved. You can think of it too, this plane, whoops, lost my wing. One of the directions of force we said is in toward us. This yellow stick is hanging out. So I go back. When I start down, my job is to curve this shaft, curve the shaft around, and then in here, I curve it in toward me, and the club squares up. So if I let this go, the club didn't get to impact. So I have to use my body to curve, 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 impact, this will be kind of like out past my left or in line with my left hip at that point, versus if I let it go, the club didn't get around enough. And one really good drill you could do is if I hold the club by the center of mass, one component is the club is working up and down, the other is working around. So the goal for this drill is to swing without hitting my left hip. So if I let it go, it's gonna hit. See, if I let it fall, it's gonna hit me. But I'm here, I'm working with my body, working to hold this club up, and then it's gonna work. It's gonna work. So it's gonna be, so I'm gonna be here, it's working down, but it's working out at that point. And that's what a lot of people miss, that component of letting the club work down and out. And you could hold your club like this off to the side and use this drill and not let it hit you. Because here you're up to impact. Whereas if you, again, let it go, the club's gonna get in, your body's gonna get in the way of the club. And it's a challenge because of this distance that we hold it from. So we really have to manage this center of mass. And probably a better way to manage it would be through, sometimes we call it the big muscles in the swing, more the body. Like I talked about the rib cage, managing this center of mass versus like our wrists and arms. Because as we go, the forces on the club get pretty heavy, and it's hard to move the club. So we have to, like, say down here, we're having to use our body. That's why you're going to see as we change this and the club works out, you're going to see players' bodies, you know, do this kind of stuff to try to curve the club in back toward them. Okay. My last point, I know we're running short, is that back to that question, that's playing the game and routine. And I'm holding true to form here because we don't talk about routine enough. As an example right now, I didn't realize I'd take this much time, but when we play, to put it all together, routine, kind of the roots, you hear a lot of athletes talk about routine, and one of the roots of the word is rhythm. So, you know, when we're on the golf course, I recommend having a short routine, maybe just a few steps. So I would say, I'll go toward the camera. I would pick my target line. That's step one. You can see I'm starting to get my grip by my side. Number two, I set the club, take my setup. I might look once, notice I'm moving my feet a little bit. Look, come to a set, swing back, and through. Last step would be hold the finish. Okay, so you want to get into that rhythm. Good posture, get my target line, walk in, set the club, take my stance, look, set, back, and hold. Okay? One of the things I have in my bag is chalk. I make a chalk line on the mat. I teach on the mats a lot, and I'm looking for that bottom to erase the chalk line. We want to get the club up to that line. But I digress there. The main point there is to absolutely, once you start to piece together some of these things we're talking about, then the next step is putting it into a certain rhythm. I know Tiger Woods has really great rhythm. There's a great video out there. Someone took video of just his shots from where he stood behind it to where he set up. And it's just the same every time, unhurried, great rhythm, maybe free of a lot of thought. So, and that's that's a component too, or a consideration is to sort of move from, well, one of the last things I would like to see, and it's hard to get around it, frankly, is, you know, someone even say newer to the game or not new, up on the first tee of the golf course or second tee or wherever, and sort of tied up with thoughts. So what you're looking to do is, you know, work on these pieces at the range, and then maybe put it into this step pattern when you go to the golf course. You know, okay, I know I want my grip. I have my grip. I've got some, I know this center of mass I want to get sort of up. I can do a little bit of this. See, because if I do this and then this, I'm in a great spot right there to move and get that club to bottom out. So just think some general thoughts, whatever's kind of particular to you, and then from there, become more rhythmic with, like I talked about, first step target, second step club, take your setup, look once. There's a player on tour who does a nice thing. He sets up, comes to a stop, looks, brings his head back. Once his head comes back, he goes. So everybody's going to have Jordan's speed. He does a little sort of a little hip turn this way to get it going that way. Excuse me. So you can experiment with what works. Again, the challenge being that the ball is not moving and we're in the same footprint. So we have to get ourselves moving. And we want to be very dynamic within that footprint. Okay.
Thanks, Joe. We have a few questions from the chat.
Sure.
The first one from Kevin Davis. Could you comment on the speed of the swing?
Well, speed. What would I say? I think maybe how to generate speed, maybe is the question. I think everything goes into the mix when it comes to generating speed. It first starts with how we hold the club. If we're holding the club and it's kind of sloppy, and we're not really managing this like center of mass too well, say we're over here with it. I mean, one thing I'll tell you is if we get with this look, shaft underneath this heel pad. I'm gonna say I'm proud of myself for a second because I might be the first pro that's relating speed to grip, but it's true. Because if we're underneath that heel pad, we have now an increased ability to turn what was below the hands center of mass, because we're more in the heel is almost pushing down, so we're torquing this way. And if you notice, when I torque this way, voila, the center of mass is now above the hands. That's that right there. The clean. This is an interesting point in the swing. They all are, but the ability to take the center of mass from below to above the hands is very interesting how people do that. And once I have it above, if I'm in a nice clean advantage position, you know, obviously I can add some rotation at this point. I'm starting down. I can use my body to manage this center of mass to have this come out and around, and I'm going to develop maximum speed. Excuse me. The one distance killer I can tell you is when this comes out early. So if I get, again, that can be grip related. If I have sort of a sloppy grip, if I have maybe I'm not as stable. See, when we do this drill, we're rotating into the hip. We're not doing any kind of lateral. So if I get here, I throw the clip. Once this goes out early, speed's gone. So it's grip, it's getting the center of mass from below to above, and then it's managing. What's interesting is at the start of the downswing, the center of rotation of the club is the center of mass. I think sometimes people think the center of the rotation is in between the hands. It's not. It's only in between the hands, like about here, and then it starts to go up the arm at impact. So if you try to over control it with the hands, you know, we're so hand, upper body dominant sometimes that if you start to, we feel the club head, we start to overdo that, it throws the speed away. So we've gotta learn to work more from, sometimes we do a drill this way where I just rest it on my right shoulder and I move this way. This would be more the start of the downswing, and then it comes around. So I'd be here, turn, and then almost like I'm flinging it off my body, as opposed to flinging it from the wrists. Flinging it off the body is power. You can do a lot. So there's a lot of work being done, you know, and it's about being in an advantaged position, balanced position to be able to do the work.
All right,
It's kind of
thank
how
you.
I'd answer it.
Next question is, how can one self-diagnose their bad or good shots related to swing? For example, keep slicing the ball, going too high, etc.
Yeah, well, if you review the grip, that's why I said earlier, like 80% of the swing can be circled back to how we hold the club. I would go back to that. And little, like, this is different than this. I mean, we work with TrackMan, like I mentioned, at the MIT golf room, and a lot of the numbers are in degrees. So if the face is 2, 3, 4, 5 degrees off, you're going to see major differences in ball flight. That's just a few degrees. So if you relate where your hand placement is to degrees, because how we hold the club directly influences the club. How we hold the club directly influences the positioning of the club, head, the face. So I would start with grip if you're going off. A lot of people slice because we'll say look at two ways the club moves. One is it's another little training aid here. So I have an axis. It's like an AB. It's a XYZ axis. So the orange, if you can see that, is pointed right at the camera. So the X is this way, the Y is this way, and the Z is this way. So what happens with a slice is, if I rotate, if you can see this, if I rotate around the blue only, if I rotate around the blue, the face is to the right. I'm gonna slice it. I have to blend rotating around the blue with rotating around the orange. So this, just like I said, this is not a direction that people consider much at the start of the backswing, which we need because it manages the center of mass. When we're coming into impact, we want this to work out to the ball. So I'm forcing the club. So you would be torquing the club about the blue if you slice. You're torquing about the blue if you slice. I am moving the club along the blue to force it. So a slicer torques it about the blue, a straight hitter forces it along the blue. Because if I force it along the blue, then the base, I'm forcing along the blue, base will square. Torque it about the blue, so this is actually a good angle. If I torque the club about the blue, the base is right. If I move it along the blue, base is square. That's what the pro is doing there. That's why I gave you this, not hitting myself and letting it work out. This is more a together. See, what's happening is I'm moving about the blue, but then I'm moving along. So it's working out to the ball, if that makes sense. So I'm forcing that way to square the club. So watch out for that if you start hitting it right. And go back to the fundamentals: grip, posture, balance, and the start back. If we can get the start back good, we can get the grip, the posture, starting back good, chances are we're going to be in good shape.
Thanks. And then from William Furtado, he asks, can you talk about your head position?
Yes. The head position, if we go back to this, I am spiraling, we'll call it. So my head is going to stay, or I could clap my hands and reach. So the way we move, the head is going to stay steady. I'll share with you a drill that I saw a long time ago that I don't often see, and that is, if you hold your arms straight out and keep your head straight, if you move your left arm for a right-handed player, if you're lefty, you can do it reverse. If you move your arm out and just follow it with your eyes. So my head's straight, I'm following my hand with my eyes. The second stage is I'm going to hold my hand out. I'm going to rotate my head reverse, but I'm going to follow it with my eyes as long as I can. So here. That's what the head does in the golf swing. So we have to be able to look at the ball while moving our head. So it's almost like we're looking at it. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. If we have more neck flexibility, I can keep my head more steady. But average person, I would allow for a little bit of rotation while looking at the ball out of the peripheral vision. I would never advise someone to keep their head still or down. That gets a lot of attention. I was going to go over some myths of the swing, but I more decided to keep it on what you want to do versus what you don't want to do. But the head gets this, it's like this catch-all thing. Letting this go is what people mistake for the head coming up. So if I let this go, they think you need to stay down, but no, it's the head, I guess it's just what we see, the top of the motion, but it's more what's happening below. That's the real driver.
Great.
That
Thanks.
said, the head will stay pretty steady as we go until we get to here where we're pulled around. But what I've seen is when people start thinking head steady, it kind of leaks down into their whole body. And then, like we talked about, this rib cage flexibility, it gets frozen. So the head becomes the whole half of their body, and they're wrapping, again, like I said earlier, they're going more across their body, and the bottom of the swing, you can't get to it. So yeah, let your head move a little bit. Freedom of motion.
All right, and then one last question from our
Sure.
audience. How do you keep your hands and hips in sync?
Hands and hips in sync? Yeah, that's a great question. This direction of force it's a green stick. It's coming out toward me. You could think of it as like centripetal and centrifugal force. So as we go back, I mentioned like the force along the z-axis here. When we move our hips, it's almost like an imaginary string that's attached to my body. So I'm feeling a pulling in from this direction. And then as I pull in, the club, that's another way the club works out because I'm pulling in. So it's a great question. And especially with chipping, I used that the other day with chipping, like, and I'll notice when I give lessons, when I demonstrate, I'll always finish more facing the target because you have to keep this, you have to keep the force along the shaft, you have to keep that curving. That's why even this swing to the left side of your hip, because I'm always forcing along the shaft and I'm always keeping it curving. That's a great question. And you can almost get a feeling like your hands are really just your connection to the club. They're not really like the main source of moving the center of mass. And what I just did there is important too. And I mentioned it earlier. You want to, a lot of players, you might not even know you're doing it, but you need some starting mechanism. So you might, like I mentioned, Jordan Spieth, he gives it a little hip turn to the target, and then he goes away. So it's a way to, like your question, to connect the hips and the club, which is important to sync those up. But yeah, so if you picture that imaginary string and just curve the club with your hips, that might get your club and your hips more in sync. Hope that helped.
Thank you. At the moment, there doesn't seem to be any more questions in the chat.
Okay.
We'll give it just another minute, but it looks like you've answered everything thus far.
Okay, well, I really appreciate everybody watching. It's really an honor to do this. I've watched a lot of Zoom meetings, but this is the first one I've done, so I really thank everybody for Diane, Anthony, making this happen, and everybody watching. I'm not too far away in Middleton, or at MIT, hopefully sooner than later. So one way or another, we can, I'm sure we can connect if anybody has any additional questions or wants any in-person instruction.
Thank you
Excellent.
again. Thank you again so much, Joe, for like just a fantastic talk on tips and what to do and what to avoid with golf. It's a fantastic talk today, and the
Thanks
rhythm,
so much.
the rhythm and routine and importance of that in golf. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Diane.
Yeah, this has been really informative, and we've done so many of these Zoom meetings, and it's difficult enough talking into the void, much less when you're trying to demonstrate live on a field too. So this is really great. Thank you so much for this.
My pleasure. Anytime. Enjoyed it.
And thank you to everybody that came out. We hope you had a good time. We hope you enjoyed everything, and we hope we'll see you at another MyTech event.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.